Hi, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to use GarageBand to adjust the volume of the master track, add a denoiser and prepare your files for exporting and saving. Now if this is your first time using GarageBand, make sure you watch my previous video where I show you how to add tracks and do simple cuts. So let's get to it. Before I even start editing, let me show you how I set up my files. This is really important because you want all of your files to be organized so you can find them easily as you're putting the project together, so you can find your music, find your audio tracks, for example. You also want to be able to find these for when you want to revisit potentially a project. Maybe there's some extra clips that you want to do and you want to revisit a project file, so you need to have those organized. And finally, I have them organized so I can archive them easily, and I have a system that I follow. At the moment, files that I'm working on presently are on my desktop to make it easier for me to edit, but as soon as I finish that project and I've published the episode, I move them onto my external drive in this case to free up space on my computer. This is something that I learned the hard way, so if you're starting out as a podcaster, make sure you have your files all sorted and have an external source where you can save your files so you don't use up so much memory on your computer. So here's an example of a folder for an episode I'm currently editing. You can see I've got the project files saved here, raw footage such as the audio tracks, the interviews with my guest, the music as well. Files that I finished with, I export here. So you can see I've got the WAV file, which is the high definition file that I upload to the podcast platform. And I have assets as well, which are all my graphics and things that I use for social media to promote the episode. You may find the structure works well for you. I find it works for me, so you can use it if you want. So for this, I'm going to need to change my headphones so I can actually hear the track while I'm recording at the same time. Let's work on the volume for our tracks. So if we look at GarageBand, you can see the first track here is me speaking. This one here is actually the music. And if I left click here, I can actually change that. Maybe I can select the music. And just for a reminder for myself, I can rename this as music. The yellow lines here, if you recall, are the volume. So if I just hit spacebar here, you'll hear, unmute that, you'll hear me talking.
Episode 2.
Music comes in.
Hello
then it
and
fades
welcome
down.
to T-Soul Pop.
Great. What if I wanted to add further music down the line and use it in different ways, like maybe for a little segue between moments? How do I keep the same level and use the same sort of level of fade so the music isn't louder in one part and then quieter in another? I want to kind of get the levels sorted. There's a few ways you can do this. I'm going to isolate this track because I want to work on the music track, make sure I've selected it. And let's say it's the same music I want to use. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to move the playhead here, and then you can either click and paste or Control V for pasting. Make sure you've selected the track, so if you don't, it will probably paste above and then it will cut into your speaking. But as you can see here, I've pasted the music and the level is the same as before. This keyframe that's brought the volume down to minus 31 decibels is the same here. What if I wanted it to start at the same level and then fade down like before? For this, I'm going to add in a keyframe, and I'm going to zoom in a bit so I can see a bit better. Let's use that. I'm going to move my playhead here, and I'm going to add the keyframe just before the music starts. I'm going to add another keyframe here and another one here. And if I go back to where I was before to find out what the levels were, if you recall, this one, if I click and hold, is minus, let's call it minus 10 decibels, and this one minus 31. Okay, so let's move back to our volume. There they are. I'm going to bring this one up and I'm dragging it here. Let's move it down to minus 10. Thereabout, yeah. And I held it for a few beats and then it faded down. So for that, I'll need to add another keyframe. Making sure I keep that level. And this you can adjust depending on how sharp you want the fade to be, right? This you'll have to kind of eyeball a bit and listen to it. So let's have a listen, let's see. Great. And you can use that for whenever you want to add in music, is just to kind of use the copy paste and then use the keyframes again to adjust your levels. If you do find it easier, an alternative would be if you've got different pieces of music particularly, or you're just finding it's getting a bit too crowded on the track, you can just add a new track and again, left click. Call this like music 2 or whatever makes sense for you, and you could just add the music here and adjust it on this one so it's not all on the same track. That's an alternative. Let's say we've finished the episode and we now want to control the master volume of the track before we export it, and this prevents it from being too loud or too quiet for the podcast platform we're going to upload it to. It's good to note what the levels you are using for your podcast so you can keep them consistent across your episodes. So let's now open up the master track so we can adjust the overall volume. And to do this, you can just go to track, you can go show master track, or you can go Command-Shift-M if you want to use the shortcut, which I will do here, and there we go, that's our master track. So anything we change on here, we can bring the volume right down. It's obviously going to mute the whole track right up, and it's going to make it incredibly loud.
Tease or Bob, Season 8, Episode 2.
I say that I've actually got these earphones in. It would sound a lot louder on my headphones, but let's see what that level is. Let's bring it down to maybe -1 decibels and see what's happening. I'm going to watch the sidebar here to make sure it's not peaking into the red.
Tease or Bob, Season 8, Episode 2.
Yeah, that's good.
Hello and welcome.
You'll have to experiment to see what works for you, but for me, for this track, the -1 decibel seems really appropriate. I'd obviously have to test it a few times outside recording this video to make sure it's just right, but this seems to work pretty well. You may hear that -14, -15, -16 lufs are used as a measure. Now, I'm using decibels here as my measure and not lufs, but if you are using lufs on another editing platform, setting it around -14 to -16 is the standard, whether you're using Apple Podcasts or Spotify or YouTube. I tend to set it in -15 lufs just to kind of meet in the middle. Now let's add a noise gate to remove any unwanted sound and breaths from my track. For this, I'm going to make sure I've selected the audio track, so I've muted the others so I can focus on this. I'm also going to loop a particular section by clicking the loop option. So I can pinpoint where I am a bit breathy and use that as my point of reference. So let's see.
Your community is Amy.
You can hear a breath there. So let's make sure we've selected the track. Go down to track here and you can see there's a noise gate option to click. So I'm going to select this and let's see how that sounds.
Your community is Amy. Your community is Amy.
You can hear that's already removed that breath, and that's, if I click here, you can see I've opened up the controls. That's set at -30 decibels.
Your community is Amy.
But it's a bit jumpy though. It's cutting my words a bit too much, and that can happen with a noise gate. So I'm going to adjust this level to bring it up a bit so my words don't sound so choppy.
Your community is Amy.
And that's brought the breath back. Let's see. Maybe we split the difference.
Your community is Amy. Your community is Amy. Your community.
There we go. That's worked at -32 decibels. Once you've found a level that works, remove the loop and listen to the rest and see if that's worked for your track.
My name is Laura, and joining me today to talk about creating content to grow your community.
You see, you can hear that's cut too much with the other words, so I am going to bring this up a bit more.
Joining me today to talk about creating content to grow your community. My name is Laura, and joining me today to talk about creating content to grow your community.
There we go. There's still going to be some breath in there, but at least the words aren't getting cut. So when you're using a noise gate like this, make sure you play around with the levels, listen to the track, listen to what's happening to your sentences, and adjust accordingly. So that's that applied, and now I'm going to save these settings. We've adjusted the volume, we've added a noise gate, now we're ready to export. Before you do, make sure you save the project file. So I've just done that and I've saved it in my files from earlier. So if I want to reopen this and have all these tracks to do further editing later down the line, I can do. To export, I'm going to go to Share. I'm going to export song to disk, making sure that you've set the boundaries for the track you're exporting, like I showed in the previous video. Now here you have the option of MP3 as the default, which is great if you're exporting the file to check with somebody and share it. It keeps the file quite compressed and not too large. But if you're preparing now to upload to your podcast platform, go for the WAV or WAV file. And this is not compressed, so it has more information in the file, and this is the one you want. So once you've done that, you've agreed where you're going to save it, you click export. This can take a bit of time. Good time to take a cup of tea. If you have any other questions that you'd like me to demonstrate so you can edit your podcast using GarageBand, let me know in the comments below.